Hello, you're watching TVP World News. I'm Milasz Rawiński. The Munich Security Conference is the largest and most influential security gathering of the year, considered by many to be a litmus test for transatlantic relations. Last year, US Vice President JD Vance shocked the audience with his scathing criticism of European politics. This year, however, US Secretary of State Marco Rubio reassured the Europeans by focusing on America's attachment to its relationship with Europe.
Munich Security Conference is wrapping up. This major security transatlantic event, the most important in the year, is coming to its end. Now, what are the major takeaways from this event? We would like to offer you three main points. Number one, it is much better atmospherics in transatlantic relations. The event was frequented by Marco Rubio, the US Secretary of State. He came here, he charmed everyone, he was nice. He basically was all the things that JD Vance, US Vice President, wasn't when he came here last year. A lot of people are actually considering a typical bad cop, good cop act. And some people are even saying perhaps substance actually remains the same, but indisputably the atmospherics is now much better. Number two, it's about Ukraine. Ukraine is really present in all the speeches, in all the major appearances at this conference. There was also a very passionate speech by President Zelensky, who was calling upon Europeans to be ready for war, to be ready for self-defense. And Poland's Prime Minister, Donald Tusk, was the one who delivered the annual award to the Ukrainian nation. Now, number three, it's about Europe and about European ability for autonomy, sovereignty, and ability to act independently of any other nation, including the United States. So all major European leaders, including Chancellor Merz, but also President Macron, spoke about European nuclear deterrence. That's quite a new thing, and this is really breaking with a taboo which until now existed in international relations and especially transatlantic relations. So these are three main takeaways from this event, which certainly was marked by much better atmosphere in transatlantic relations. This is Marcin Zaborowski from Munich Security Conference.
Referring to the Russian aggression against Ukraine, US Ambassador to NATO Matthew Whitaker said during a side session at the Munich Security Conference that, and I quote, China could end this war tomorrow. Whitaker called on Ukraine's allies to step up their pressure on China and stressed that any peace deal must be acceptable to Ukraine.
This war is being completely enabled by China. And China could call Vladimir Putin and end this war tomorrow and cut off his dual-purpose technologies that they're selling. China could stop buying Russian oil and gas. There are lots of opportunities for the world to put pressure on China. Any deal has, and this is something we agree on, has to be an agreement between not only the Russians, but the Ukrainians. And it has to be a deal that's acceptable to them. And, you know, my biggest fear is that the Ukrainians, I think, are willing to make a deal right now that's reasonable, that under the circumstances would be fair. There's really no fair deal here because, again, Russia invaded Ukraine and has been, executing this attritional war. But I just am not convinced that ultimately the Russians are ready to make a deal or ever will be able to make a deal.
Russia attacked Ukraine with more than 80 drones overnight, the Ukrainian Air Force has said, and the attack was still ongoing as of this morning. Ukrainian air defense was able to shoot down 55 drones, while the remainder hit 12 locations. Drone debris was reported in 3 more areas. The attack follows the deaths of at least 5 people and injuries to 13 others across several regions on Saturday. At this year's Munich Security Conference, the war in Ukraine remains a key geopolitical topic as Kyiv continues to fight off relentless Russian attacks. During the event, Poland's Foreign Minister Radosław Sikorski pointed out that it's Europe that now has taken over the role of primary provider of military aid for Kyiv.
We are now paying for this war. The American outlay for the war for last year was close to zero. We are buying American weapons to be delivered to Ukraine. There is no package in the US Congress, and that there isn't even the prospect of a package. If we are paying, if this is affecting our security, not just Ukraine's, then we deserve the seat at the table, because the outcome of this war will affect us.
Addressing his supporters as the election campaign heats up in Hungary, Prime Minister Viktor Orbán said that, and I quote, "The European Union is the biggest threat to us, not Russia." His Fidesz party is still behind in the polls for the April the 12th vote. This adds to Orbán's previous unsubstantiated statement that the EU will lead Hungarians to their deaths in Ukraine should he lose the upcoming election. Andrew Sweeney has the details.
Hungary's Prime Minister Viktor Orbán made his annual State of the Nation speech, the last before the general elections on April 12th. And in it, he outlined who he sees as Hungary's enemies. Of course, there was Ukraine. That's come out repeatedly in recent days that Orbán believes it to be an enemy. There was the petroleum company Shell, which she says actually funds the war in Ukraine. And then, of course, there was Germany, singled out perhaps because the country's Chancellor, Friedrich Merz, gave a cryptic endorsement of the Teaser party and its leader, Peter Magyar. That party is leading the polls for the general election by about 10 to 12%. However, Merz might not get everything that he would like from a Magyar-led Hungary. That is because after the meeting, which Magyar described as very productive and cordial, he made it clear on social media that he would not support a quick entrance of Ukraine into the EU. He would not support the EU Migrant Pact afterwards. Now, while Magyar has pledged to restore relations with Warsaw, which have been heavily strained while Orbán has been Prime Minister, relations with the EU might be a little bit more difficult to repair, given those opinions. For TVP World in Budapest, Andrew Sweeney.
Now, US Secretary of State Marco Rubio is on his way to Slovakia to discuss Washington's expectations regarding the European country's phase-out of Russian raw material imports. According to Slovakian sources, the talks will also focus on nuclear energy. The discussion on Slovakia's energy sector follows Slovakian Prime Minister Robert Fico's signing of a nuclear energy cooperation agreement during his visit to the US in mid-January. The deal will most likely result in the American company Westinghouse building new units at the Jaslovskie Bohunice nuclear power plant in Slovakia. In addition to energy-related topics, Monday's meeting is expected to cover the modernization of the Slovakian army and the country's NATO alliance commitments. During the Munich Security Conference, German Defense Minister Boris Pistorius stated that, and I quote, "the NATO alliance depends on predictability of actions." His statement comes amid the growing frustration over US foreign policy among some European leaders.
The alliance needs to make sense for all members. Even the United States cannot act alone in today's world of emerging great powers. It needs allies. Having more than 30 of them all united in one powerful alliance is truly unique. But our alliance also needs to make sense for Europe. It depends on predictability. It depends on predictability of actions, and it depends on reliability of the American commitment. Questioning the territorial sovereignty and integrity of a NATO member state, excluding European allies from negotiations that are crucial to the security on the continent, all this damages our alliance and strengthens our adversaries, ladies and gentlemen.
European Commissioner for Defence and Space, Andrius Kubilius, has proposed a new concept for European security, based in part on the so-called E5 format. According to the European official, this could lay the foundations for a European Security Council, with Poland being among its permanent members.
The EU Commissioner said the idea for a European Security Council harks back to an idea shared by French President Emmanuel Macron and former German Chancellor Angela Merkel. Kubilius added that in his opinion, it should include permanent members, for example Germany, France, Italy, Spain and Poland. possibly also the United Kingdom, and the heads of EU institutions, the Commission and the Council. The E5 group is a group of European countries cooperating on defence issues, consisting of Poland, Italy, the UK, France and Germany. The group is also engaged in discussing security guarantees for Ukraine in the event of a peace agreement with Russia.
The United Kingdom, together with France, Germany, Sweden and the Netherlands, have confirmed that, while imprisoned in Russia, Alexei Navalny was poisoned with epibetine, a lethal toxin occurring naturally in the skin of Ecuadorian dart frogs. They claim Russia is responsible for violating the Chemical Weapons Convention. The announcement was made at the Munich Security Conference and highlights Russia's ongoing pattern of using chemical weapons, including in Salisbury and Ukraine. Randy Potts has more.
A joint investigation by the UK, France, Germany, Sweden and the Netherlands confirmed on Saturday that biological samples from the late activist Alexei Navalny contained epibetine, a lethal chemical derived from poison dart frogs. Experts state that since this toxin is not found naturally in Russia, its presence proves the state had the unique means and motive to carry out a targeted assassination. Since the announcement, leaders from several countries have weighed in. From France,
2 years ago, Alexei Navalny died in a Russian penal colony. We immediately expressed our suspicion that he had been murdered. Today, exactly 2 years after his death, we are providing evidence along with 5 other countries that he was poisoned.
from Germany,
Navalny's poisoning must have consequences. That is why the responsible bodies must now be involved, and that is why we have also informed the Director General of the Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons about our findings.
and from the UK.
Alexei Navalny displayed huge courage in the face of tyranny. His determination to expose the truth has left an enduring legacy, and my thoughts are with his family today. I am doing whatever it takes to defend our people, our values and our way of life from the threat of Russia and Putin's murderous intent.
The coalition is now reporting Russia to the Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons for what they describe as a flagrant breach of international treaties. Navalny's widow, Yulia Navalnaya, also reacted to the findings today.
I was certain from the first day that my husband had been poisoned, but now there is proof. Putin killed Alexei with a chemical weapon. I am grateful to the European states for the meticulous work they carried out over 2 years and for uncovering the truth.
While the Kremlin continues to maintain Navalny died of natural causes, this discovery follows a history of poisoning attempts of Russian dissidents, with evidence often leading back to Russian President Vladimir Putin. For TVP World, Randy Potts.
Poland's unofficial Winter Olympics mascot continues to win over hearts all over the world. In the US, the only store offering the original pieroguszka has run out of stock as fans rushed to purchase the plush toy. The Pierożek restaurant in Brooklyn, which happens to be the only Michelin-starred Polish restaurant in the US, is the only place that stocks the viral mascot across the country. The owner of the restaurant, Radek Kucharski, believes that pierogi, the main dish sold at his restaurant, are Poland's international symbol, and says that he has been ordering pieroguszka from an online shop called Luft for the past 3 years. The pillows are handmade with people with disabilities, and the company is made up of just over a dozen people. When pieroguszka went viral, all the stock sold out overnight, and the restaurant remains inundated with emails and phone calls asking about the adorable mascot. And with this, we conclude this edition of TVP World News. Please stay with us for more latest updates and commentary.